sections of students of any discipline need to have a comprehensive understanding about how they should go about making presentations. There are different forms of presentation. There are various factors which go into presentation. We will be discussing all those factors which are significant and important for making an effective presentation. The purpose of presentation, number one, is to give information. Two, to influence students or audience. Three, to persuade them. Four, to motivate them. Five, to educate them. And the most important factor in presentation, learning has to take place. So when we take these 6 elements into consideration as important for presentation, the purpose of presentation is to highlight those 6 factors we have identified. There are several ways of going about making presentation. We will try to discuss what are the several ways of going about making presentation, what are the characteristics which are important for an effective presentation. Let me quote a latest study which has been carried out in India, which says verbal content when you are making a presentation is only 7%. When we are talking about verbal content, the kind of language you use, the kind of semantics you use in terms of presentation is only 7%. Voice modulation and articulation, which is important for presentation, is about 38%. Body language is 55%. So it is important that we need to take all these factors into consideration. We think only verbal content is important, but the role of verbal content is only 7%. Look at the role of voice modulation and articulation is 38%, and body language communicates 55%. We are also going to be discussing the role of body language in presentation. We have given you this study findings because you need to get an understanding about what is the role of verbal content, what is the role of voice modulation and articulation, and what is the role of body language. One of the important factors in terms of communication is to empathize with students. We are trying to communicate for students. It is important to know the students have to get information. As long as we do not understand this concept of empathy, our communication is not going to be successful. Our presentation is not going to be very effective. Are we empathizing with our students? In other words, empathy would mean, are we trying to put ourselves in the place of the students in the process of communication? There are several factors which we need to take into consideration in terms of presentation. Let me try to list out some of these factors. One, what is the nature of material you want to present to the students? Who are the students? What is their background? What is their intellectual level? In what kind of a class you are lecturing? Are you lecturing to undergraduate students? Are you lecturing to postgraduate students? Are you lecturing to PhD students? Are you participating in a seminar? Are you participating in a national conference? Are you making a presentation at an international conference? All these factors we need to take into consideration, because depending upon for whom we are communicating, we are going to be pitching our lecture or presentation at that level. That is where it is very, very important to get understanding, a comprehensive understanding about audience profile. As we get a comprehensive understanding about our audience, we go about preparing for the lecture. How do we go about preparing for that presentation? Number one, preparation of material. When you are preparing material, you need to do thorough research. You need to collect all information relating to the topic or the subject on which you're going to be making a presentation. It is very important for you to have a thorough understanding on the subject on which you are going to make a presentation. Let me take an example. If you're going to be making a presentation on education scenario in India, it's a wide topic. It has to cover various levels relating to education. The primary level, the higher secondary level, then college level, then the university level, then we're talking about at a research level. Education has got different kinds of structures, and it is important that we need to be very, very narrow in our scope. So it is very important when you're talking about preparation, you need to select a topic. Your topic has to be specific. Topic has got to be narrow. If it is a very wide topic like higher education in India or education in India, it is going to be very difficult for you to go about making a presentation, because you would not know on what aspects you are going to be making a presentation on. Because normally a presentation is about for 15 or 20 minutes. It is not possible for you to cover so many issues relating to higher education in India in about 15 or 20 minutes. That is where selection of a topic becomes important. After you select your topic, then you go about structuring your topic. Structuring of a topic would mean, how are you going to introduce the subject? How are you going to developing it? What kind of examples are you going to be giving it? How are you going to be summarizing it? So all these factors need to be taken into consideration in terms of making a presentation. One of the important factors in terms of making a presentation is you need to have a total control over the subject on which you are making a presentation. Only when you have a total understanding about the subject on which you are making a presentation, you will have self-control, and then you will be in a position to make a very relaxed presentation. If you're not prepared very well, if you do not have a total understanding about the subject, you will not be in a position to relax and make a presentation. And only when you prepare very well, you will be in a position to maintain an eye contact. One of the important things in terms of making an effective presentation is to maintain an eye contact with your audience. If there are about 100 people, if you are participating in a seminar and making a presentation there, you need to see that all the 100 people are involved in your presentation. You are not only speaking to 2 or 3 people, you are addressing 100 of them. And that is where body language plays an important role in terms of presentation. One of the aspects relating to body language is maintaining an eye contact. And then once you have prepared your lecture, as we have talked about, that we need to have an understanding about who the audience are and at what level you need to be going about communicating. As long as we do not have an understanding about our audience, it becomes very difficult for us to communicate. Another important aspect in terms of presentation is what kind of visual aids you want to use for presentation. There are several kinds of visual aids which are available. Are you going to be making a PowerPoint presentation? Are you going to be using some transparencies? Sometimes in a classroom situation, we simply use a blackboard. What kind of visual aids we have? There are many, many visual aids today, audiovisual aids which are available for making a presentation. And you need to be familiar with all those audiovisual aids in terms of making a presentation. Then, once the entire material is ready, once you start making a presentation, what is important is your pitch, your volume, your emphasis, and the kind of pauses you want to give. What is the pitch? At what level of pitch you want to make a presentation? What is the volume of your presentation? Where do you want to emphasize? Where you want to give some thrust for your presentation? And where you need to pause is also important in terms of presentation. Because you cannot speak at one pitch. You need to have intonation. You need to modulate your voice. You need to give the right kind of a pause at the right kind of a place. And that is where you can ensure participation of your audience. After all, what is the purpose of presentation? The purpose of presentation is to see that your audience also participate in what you are saying. We are trying to see that they get involved in your presentation. We are making a presentation for the audience. As part of the presentation, we should also ensure that are we allowing our audience to pose questions. Question and answers is very important part of presentation. We must try to see that you make a presentation in such a manner that your audience or your students will ask some questions. A good presentation must have questions. You must try to enlighten your students in such a manner that they will get motivated. They will have the enthusiasm to ask questions. Only when they ask questions, you will have an idea about how effective your presentation has been. Through questions, you'll get an understanding about how much, they've understood what you have spoken for the last 20 minutes. Let us try to take, some 6 major factors, which are important in terms of presentation. I would like to identify them as, to enhance presentation skills, these 6 factors are important. Why, who, where, when, what, and how. Let me try to explain these 6 important factors in terms of effective presentation. Why? What is the purpose of your presentation? Look at, the various purposes of presentation. The functions of presentation: to inform, to persuade, to influence, to educate, to empathize, to entertain, to sympathize. That is where we need to pose that question, why are we making a presentation? And then, to whom are we making a presentation? The characteristics of listeners, the personality of your students, the age of your students, the education status of your students, the knowledge levels of your students, and the anticipated response. What kind of a response you want? So age becomes important, education level becomes important, their personality becomes important, their knowledge levels become important. To whom are we lecturing? Whom are we making the presentation becomes important. So you need to take all these attributes of the students. The age becomes important, education becomes important, their knowledge level becomes important, their anticipated response also becomes important. Where are we lecturing? The place of lecture. Are we lecturing in the classroom? Are we lecturing at a meeting? Are we lecturing in a formal place or an informal place? Then again, your presentation needs to differ depending upon the place we are making the presentation. When are we making the presentation? The context and the time. Both of them are important. In what kind of a context we are making the presentation? And when are we making the presentation? It is important for us to get that information so that we can go about making our presentation more effectively. What are we saying? Very important for presentation. The subject matter, the scope. Every subject matter has got a scope. The need for making a presentation. We cannot have a very broad topic. We need to narrow it down. We need to make specific presentation because time is a major constraint in terms of presentation. No person is going to be getting more than 15 or 20 minutes to make a presentation. So what are we going to be saying? And then how are we going to be making a presentation? Strategies to be adopted. How a presentation is important. Strategies in verbal communication. What kind of pictures we are going to be using? What kind of slides we are going to be using? What kind of transparencies we are going to be using? Which ones need to be incorporated? What kind of slides we need to have? What kind of a color we need to have? Color also makes an important role in terms of presentation. Is that color pleasing to the eye? All these factors we need to go about taking into consideration in terms of presentation. So you need to understand we are making a presentation to inform, to persuade, to influence, to educate, to empathize, and we are also making a presentation to entertain our students. So if we can understand the personality, the education, age, status, knowledge, where are we communicating, when are we communicating at workplace, are you communicating at home, what are we communicating, how are we communicating, what kind of a language we need to use, what is our tone of presentation, what is the appropriate medium we are selecting for making a presentation, what kind of audiovisual aids we are making a presentation, your presentation is going to be very effective. Let me also now list out 7 important steps for a successful presentation. Number 1, decide upon the objective. What is the objective of your presentation? What is the purpose of your presentation? Number 2, manner of presentation. What kind of a manner, what kind of a style you're going to be having in terms of presentation? What kind of audiovisual aids you're going to be using in terms of your presentation? Number 3, the mode of presentation, the style of presentation. Number 4, preparation of script. Very, very important that we need to prepare a script. We need to prepare an outline of our presentation. Number 5, preparation of visual aids, preparation of handouts, and preparation of feedback forms. As part of your presentation, we also need to have a feedback form. We need to find out after we have made a presentation, after the seminar is over, or after you have made a presentation in a classroom, we need to get a feedback from the students. 6th important factor, we need to continuously, before we go about making a presentation, practice. Rehearsal is very important. There are several ways we can go about rehearsing. We can stand in the front of a mirror and speak for about 10 minutes or 15 minutes. There you can record your presentation on a tape recorder, then listen to it and find out what are the deficiencies, so that we can go about improving your presentation. After taking all the 6 steps into consideration, after rehearsing, you go about making a presentation. Why are we making a presentation? We are making a presentation to explain, to give ideas. We are making a presentation to meet the demands of the audience. We want to make an effective presentation. We need to be very confident in terms of our presentation. The purpose of presentation is to generate interest. We must ensure increased attention when you are making a presentation. The purpose of presentation is we are sharing ideas, information, and knowledge. That is where, if we can take these 7 steps into consideration. Number 1, decide upon the objective. Number 2, manner of presentation. Number 3, mode of presentation. Number 4, preparation of script. Number 5, preparation of visual aids, handouts, feedback forms, rehearsal, and then make a presentation. Your presentation will be very, very successful. Let us talk about in detail what is the purpose of feedback in presentation. I said one of the important forms when you make a presentation, you need to get the feedback, and you need to prepare a feedback form. As part of the presentation, it's also important that we go about preparing a feedback form. What is the purpose of preparing a feedback form, and what should a feedback form should include? Number 1, information about the audience. Who are the audience? What is their background? What are their educational qualifications? Do they have any professional experience? What is their academic background? We need to get information about the audience. Number 2, level of acceptance of the speaker. We need to find out, did they like our presentation? Has the presentation been effective? Did the speaker deliver his presentation properly? Have they understood what the speaker has said? So, level of acceptance of the speaker is another important aspect. As part of the level of comprehension, you will be in a position to improve your presentation next time. Are there any inadequacies in terms of your presentation? Because ultimately you are making a presentation for the students, for the audience. They need to identify what are the inadequacies in terms of your presentation. so that you can overcome those inadequacies. What were their expectations from the presentations? Are their expectations have been met? Is another way we can find out in the feedback form. To what extent they were met? What was their expectation? To what extent they have been met? Scope for further development. In what areas your presentation has been good? Is it in terms of audiovisual aids? In terms of your oral communication, verbal communication, in terms of your body language, or in terms of your content? So you need to get comprehensive idea relating to presentation. All this is only possible provided you adopt the guidelines we have so extensively talked about making a presentation, so that you can make an effective presentation. I hope next time when you make a presentation, you will take all the guidelines, rules and principles we talked about for making an effective presentation. Hoping next time when you make a presentation, you will try to take these factors into consideration for making an excellent presentation.